We're live.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right, can you get rid of the agenda? I'd rather see the people. There you go. All right, very good. All right, we are going to start the meeting. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Portsmouth Planning Board. Today is Wednesday, January 13th, 2021. First item on the agenda, are there any changes or continuances, Mr. Blazinski? You can't hear me. I don't believe there are, so we'll move
Well,
on.
they said they were postponing the third thing, right?
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Okay.
When we get to it. All right, item number 2, approval of the minutes of the planning board meeting, our last meeting on November 25th, 2020. The minutes were in the packet that we received. Everybody have a chance to review them? Any comments, any changes, any modifications?
I would like to make a motion to accept the minutes as printed.
There is a motion to accept the minutes. Is there a second?
David did.
Anybody?
Need somebody?
Second,
That Ms. Wilson?
second,
All right, so there's a second. Is there any other further discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. We'll go through the agenda. The list. We have to do it that way. Mr. Harding,
Approve.
Mr. Lopes,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
aye.
Mr. Garceau,
He's on mute.
you're on mute, Mr. Garceau.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pilati,
Aye.
chairman votes aye. Are there any abstentions or negatives?
Mr. Chair, I'll abstain. I was not at the November meeting.
Mr. Pilati? Yep, okay. You got that? We need the minutes should reflect that he was not here at the meeting and is
I
abstaining.
have it.
You got it? All right, Dee, thank you. All right, we're moving on. Next item on the agenda, item number 3. This is an application by West Main Solar 2 LLC for a proposed solar on AP 30 Lot 8 West Main Road, 0.1 miles south of Lehigh Terrace. This is a pre-application informal concept review for that development. Is the applicant ready to proceed?
The applicant is Scott Milnes, and he's on now.
Mr. Millens? Love technology. Where are we, Mike? You have both petitions?
Yeah,
I was gonna say it would make sense, but
yeah, I'm asking him to unmute. Oh, there he is.
you have to unmute, sir.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh,
The application by West Main Solar 2 is in front of us.
correct. Okay.
You may proceed. Your name and where your address is.
My name is Scott Milnes. I'm the president of Equinox Renewables and Equinic Renewables. And we have an office on 100 Bellevue Avenue in Newport, Rhode Island.
You can proceed.
My name is Scott Milnes. I'm the president of Equinox Renewables and Equinic Renewables. I'm a resident of Middletown, Rhode Island. We've been developing solar in Rhode Island for the last 5 years, mostly commercial solar. We have 2 projects tonight. This is the first project, which is West Main Solar 2, and the second project is West Main Solar 1. We've looked at the ordinance and we know there's a lot of sensitivity to the siting of these projects and where they are. We've tried to establish buffers, and, you know, we've increased the setbacks that are required by the ordinance that was passed. We know there's been a lot of, I know being from the island, I drove by the Navy base project, and it's like right in your face. And we've pushed these solar projects, both projects, away from West Main Road. And we tried to increase the buffers, especially on the next project after this. So we have more buffers to the neighbors. So I just wanted to give you an introduction of Equinox on myself, and I'll let my engineer Drew kind of go through the application and the plans, and I'm open for any questions once Drew does his presentation.
Just get through,
Hang on.
over here.
Any questions for me before Drew starts, or no?
We haven't heard anything yet.
No, before Drew starts, I'm gonna mute myself now. Is my engineer supposed to do the presentation? Drew from Wood
Hi,
Engineering.
everyone.
There you go.
Everybody.
There he is.
Your name, sir?
Hi, my name is Andrew Vardakis. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Rhode Island. I work for a company called Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions. Our office is located at 275 Promenade Street, 100 in Providence.
What kind of an engineer?
I'm a civil engineer and project manager for Wood on behalf of Equinox, the applicant. So what I thought I would do, I'm happy to share my screen, or I see the application is up. I can also walk through as it's shown on the screen. Essentially,
We can share the screen. I think we.
Yeah, I'll allow him to share his screen.
sure. So on the first couple pages, as you can see, there's the concept plan review request, and also the checklist for pre-application. So the relevant information is listed there. But as we get into the rest of the narrative, essentially the site is located in the residential R20 zone. The property itself is about 24 acres. And of that 24 acres, the solar project is about 7.5 acres. The fence line occupies that much. I'm sorry, did you say you would like me to share my screen, or would you?
Yes, if that's the way you want to present.
Sure. Just give me one moment.
I have to do this at school now. I didn't know Zoom from anything
From Doom.
9 months ago.
So
No.
I just pulled up the site plan. Can everybody see the site plan there?
You can show us that screen. Staying on the
Okay, we're good.
Okay. So essentially, if you can see my mouse here, the red area is the outer limits of the property, the 24-acre area, and this X black line in here represents the 7.5-acre project, and that's the fence line. So as I mentioned, we're in the R20 residential zone, and oops. So if we look at the project here, these orange lines, these are rows of solar panels. There's approximately 7,500 panels mounted on racks that are fixed in the ground. This is a ground-mounted system, the fixed tilt. These posts are driven into the ground. The panels are south-facing. They don't rotate. They're fixed south-facing the sun. So that 7.5 acres of project area accounts for about 31% of the lot. And also on the property, I'm focusing on the main site plan here, but there's other figures I can get to. There's some wetland areas on the side, and this green line along the east side represents a wetland line. So we're staying away from the wetland areas, and as Scott mentioned, abiding by the ordinance requirements for buffers off of property lines and also abiding by vegetation buffering requirements around the perimeter. So this yellow line is shown as a tree clearing line. The center of the site you can see underneath is partially open. It's been a material storage area. So the yellow line represents the area that will be cleared of trees in order to install the system. And then also for shading purposes around the southern facing side. So between that red line of the property line and the yellow line of the clearing line, we have at least 50 feet for the property line setback and beyond the required 20 feet of vegetation screening. As you can see, these green dots, potential screening vegetation to screen potential residences off to the north for visual purposes. So if we go down through the narrative, we list the town of Portsmouth requirements in the ordinance for solar energy systems, as this is considered a large system. So our intention tonight is to give a brief introduction for pre-application and solicit any feedback from the board, and then look at next steps to proceed within the ordinance. So as we go through, say we'll abide by the applicable requirements in the ordinance. We're looking at a large SES system. Height of the panels is less than 10 feet. Up at the high rear end of the panels, it's about 8 or 9 feet, and then it slopes down to the lower front edge about 2 or 3 feet off the ground. So we're below the height requirement. For the yard setbacks, I mentioned we're at least 50 feet away from the property line, and also the greater than 20 feet vegetation requirement. The project will be sited and situated to minimize impact to the natural resource areas. Scott could probably speak more to the interconnection, but that interconnection study is underway and will be submitted with the final application we've received. I mentioned land clearing. This yellow line is the clearing line. And after the project is cleared and installed, it's reseeded. There's not much grading. There's no importing of materials. There's no excavation. It's mainly just land clearing, installing the system, and then seeding the site. So what's beneath the array is grass when we're done, to help with runoff and stormwater control, erosion and sedimentation control. So the site remains vegetated once it's installed. Going down through number 8, security fencing. I mentioned it's surrounded by a minimum 6-foot high chain link fence. We don't use barbed wire. We have used that elevated bottom of the chain link fence of wildlife. Number 9, I mentioned buffer area, setback property line, having that vegetation boundary surrounding the project. I mentioned ground cover and plant species. A lot of these pollinator grass seed mixes. We want to have seeds and plants that are native to the area. So that's a very common requirement we've seen. Lighting, typically don't have any lighting for these projects unless it's required by the town or another entity, but typically there's no lighting. You want to keep the site dark and not lit unless required by some other entity. Same with signage. There's no big signage except for contact information and emergency information for the applicant, as we typically work with local police and fire departments on that end for emergencies. Power lines. So the array, the modules are mounted on the racks throughout the center of the project, as I mentioned, and there's inverters that convert the electricity from DC to AC. So I'm not an electrical engineer. I can't elaborate too much on the electrical aspects, but those inverters collect the energy, and all of the cabling and conduit is underground, which heads out to these brown spots there. So all the electrical is underground until it gets to the poles, and then it goes above ground to overhead wires and connects to the existing grid out on West Main. Site control, again, Scott could elaborate the history on Equinox and the agreement with the property owner, but all those documents and details were submitted, including an operation and maintenance plan. We've developed those before on previous projects. I mentioned stormwater erosion control, where we're doing another large project for this right now. Typical fashion to file for Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management regarding disturbance over 1 acre and stormwater controls, runoff calculations. So we're very well versed in plan to be filing with DEM as we move forward. Pesticide and herbicide usage is not typical. We don't plan to use those. Modifications will be filed with the town. Any as-built surveys, very common. We do those as well. And again, abandonment, decommissioning, and financial surety, all things that we're familiar with in terms of abandoning the system and providing financial measures to the project will be and that there's money set aside if anything happens. Then at the bottom of the narrative, we have the list of other anticipated approvals. Physical alteration permit for a curb cut for this. I didn't mention gray area here is the proposed gravel access road. I mentioned the DEM freshwater wetlands application. RIPDs is the construction general permit for stormwater discharges for disturbance. And then also we Rhode Island Historical Preservation to look for potential federal historic or archaeological sources on the property. So those are all our due agency checks that we typically do with large scale projects like this. And then we get into the figures. I can move through. Can everybody see this is figure 1? This is the locus map, just identifying that red parcel in the center there. This figure 2 just identifies a little bit further with the abutter offset setback there. We have the abutter list on sheet 3. This was sheet 4, but figure 3, the proposed site plan I mentioned earlier. Figure 4, environmental constraints. This is typically generated from Rhode Island GIS, which shows sensitive areas, cemeteries, conservation areas, wetlands. So I mentioned there's that pocket of wetland in the circle there. It doesn't show the wetland line here, but we are aware of that well enough to the east, so we show that there to avoid that wet area off to the east. Figure 5 shows the soil map. We use this for our design of the stormwater. It shows us the infiltration capacities of the soils when we run our calculations. Sheet 7, this is the zoning map. You see all this area as the R20 zone. This is the parcel in green here. And then just some general photos from Google. You have the street view and the aerial of the property. And sheet 9, we have a topographic map. I believe this was from the town GIS. And then the last 2 sheets are electrical sheets provided by the applicant for the electrical design of the project, depicting the inverters and all the electrical information and the electrical initial site plan layout. So that's the run through of the package. If we go into more detail, happy to take any questions at this time. Solicit any feedback from the board and next steps on how to proceed.
All right, let's go back to the individuals. All right. Anybody have any questions? Members of the board?
I got
I
one.
need a comment.
Go ahead.
The engineer needs to speak up a little bit louder.
We can hear you.
Well, I was getting an echo every time the engineer turned his face a little bit.
Yeah, there was a little echoing in there, but we got the gist of it. You have any other question, Ms. Wilson?
No,
right.
Hi, this is Seth. I have a question. This is in a residential 20. What does the solar farm use meet that residential zoning requirement, or will that require a variance?
No, we plan to meet all the zoning requirements.
Mike, I guess I'm asking more, does the board, anyone on the board know if the solar,
We have a planner right here who will answer that.
okay,
So for this project, like I'll show us the town planner, it's in the R20 zoning district. So the permitting authority, for special use permit is the zoning board. So the zoning board will have a final approval. It will have to go back before a design review board and the planning board for advisory opinions prior to that.
But it requires a special use permit is the answer to your question.
okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Harding?
Okay, so Luke Harding, just a question. Is there no structure, no building, no getting out of the weather, no anything going on this property? It's just a gate and fencing and panels?
Correct. And also these green dots are equipment pads. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so what you mentioned is correct. And then also these green dots are equipment pads for the electrical equipment for the system. It's a concrete pad with a transformer mounted on it. So correct, there's no structures.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I have some questions. I assume when you talk about a transformer, that's what about the inverter or inverters? Where are they placed?
So the inverter,
Okay.
Scott, you want to take that?
Yeah, the inverters are placed on the racking within the field. So they're all placed within the solar field on the back of the racking.
Okay, so they're not in a building, they're not in a separate location.
No,
So there's no extra building there.
Nope.
You talk about the racks and all the rest of that. What's going to happen with all of those materials that are there now?
what materials are we referring to?
The current site?
You mean the fill in the site?
Yeah, whatever. We've got an aerial photograph that shows.
Yeah, that's gonna be, we're just gonna, like Drew said, nothing's gonna come in and out. We're just gonna level out what's on the site. And then we work with the contours that are there after we level out the piles there that have been put there.
All right, so you put the panels in. What goes on underneath the panels? Do you put grass? And how do you
Grass.
maintain that?
Grass.
How is that maintained?
Typically in the O&M plan, there's for the vegetation and the grass, there'll be an O&M plan, which will be required to maintain the grass. And typically, most towns have they put a height on the grass. We use a grass cut that you typically have to cut twice a year. It's a low grow grass, grows not as fast. So typically the vegetation and grass would be covered in the operation and maintenance plans.
Where are the gates to this going to be?
Gate would be, there'd be right over here where Drew has this thing would be a 12-foot, probably a 12-foot gate entering into the array area, which would be right up into the fence line, on the fence.
Isn't there a provision in our ordinance, maybe I'm wrong, for a bond to be posted to make sure that a unit of this size, when it is decommissioned, does actually go away?
Yep. Typically, most towns require a decommissioning bond, which we would place on the product for the removal of the product after its lifespan.
Do you have any idea how much of a bond would be needed?
A project every town is different. I'm not sure of what the town requirements would be. I know we just did a 5 megawatt project in Gloucester, and the decommissioning bond was like about $120,000 for 5 megawatt.
And this,
Typically the town will look at the cost provided by the engineer, and the town engineer will look at the costs, and then they'll agree upon a number.
well, the bond here has to be approved by one of the boards, so.
Right. I mean, it's typically a town process that we go through that, we satisfy.
The other thing is that you've got a sort of a generalized planting program as a buffer Traditionally, what we've done is we want to see an actual landscaping.
Yes, we would supply a landscape plan. We didn't do that because we were kind of looking,
Earlier in the process, I understand.
we were looking for input from the board just of where we want to do it. We kind of know where we should do it, and it's to the north and on the two corners where the closest residences are, but our ideas would be to screen, the areas that would, have some visibility to the project.
And we want that stamp, because you want native plants and all the rest of that.
Correct.
So it's
I
all,
think the solar ordinance spells out, one of the conditions is the landscape.
it does, but I'm just reminding you that some of these things are out there.
Yep.
All right, that's all I have. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, so, under your, Ed Lopes, planning board member, under your anticipated regulatory approvals, is there a glint glare study required, for the airport corporation?
Typically within a certain distance of an airport, we're required to do FAA. I don't think we are on this project, but these solar projects, they've been placed around airports, and they kind of absorb, they don't reflect. So if we're within a certain distance of an airport, we would, wood engineering would do an FAA for us, but I don't think this is close enough proximity.
Okay, and then my last question is, I'm not going to go through it in detail, but I did notice your abutter list. I think you need to recheck that. I know there's at least one abutter that is not correct. I hate to see you get tripped up on that.
Okay, Drew can do that.
Any other member of the board wish to address the applicant? Okay, is there any member of the public? I'm sure that there.
Yes, we do have, there's a Jason. Jason, if you could, we'll allow you to talk, if you could give your name and address before addressing the board.
Yeah, my name is Jason. I'm from 93 Ethel Drive in Portsmouth.
Last name, sir.
Carvalho.
Thank you.
I'm concerned with the wildlife assessment and if one has been done and by who.
First, I didn't hear the question.
I am concerned about the wildlife assessment and if one has been done and by who.
Applicant?
Are they muted?
It's one of them.
I think one dropped off. Hold on a second. Oh, no, there's.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, we have not done a wildlife assessment to date. Usually at this stage, we take a look at the DEM mapping and then consult with DEM throughout our freshwater wetland permit application. So to answer that question, no, not to date.
If you were to do one, who would you consult?
I don't have the answer to that. Typically, we haven't had to do those. So I can't answer that. I don't know who I would request for that.
Okay, good enough.
All right, anybody else from the public wish to address the board?
We have two anonymous questions that were typed in the question and answer section. I don't know how you would like to go about. Usually we take members of the public who give their
That's
name.
right. We'll allow any member of the public to talk, but anonymous?
If there's an attendee that would like to read their question out to the board. Okay, we have Nicole Amesbury. 1 second. All right, Nicole, if you could unmute and give your full name and address.
Yeah, this is actually her husband, Chris Amesbury, located on 15,
Incognito, huh?
yeah, incognito, located on 15 Anselmo Drive in Portsmouth. So actually 2 streets up from the site area. My first question is, we are right now witnessing a pretty large solar farm being installed on the corner of West Main and Stringham Road. My question is, how similar or different is this install from the one that's currently being installed further down on West Main Road.
Talk about the Navy one, right?
Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
All right, the applicant?
I'm not sure of the size of the Navy project. You know, this is a 3-point. This is probably a smaller project, and you know, we're well screened compared to that site. I'm not sure of the size to that because I don't know the exact size of the Navy project.
But as far as the actual look in,
Oh, it would be similar. It'd be similar racking and similar modules to what I drove by the site yesterday, and it'd be similar equipment than what you see there.
Okay. Thank you. Second question I had.
Just let me speak for a second. There's going to be a lot more buffers here than you see on that project. Speaking to the applicant.
Yes. We're gonna have the screening and the buffers, and we're leaving a lot of the buffers, and we're leaving the buffer to the road there. So we're gonna have the product well screened. The Navy product has no screening at all. It's right up against the road, so it's gonna be.
Local property. They don't have to worry about local zoning. And they can
I get that. But we'll be well screened.
Thank you to the panel for digging that question. That was kind of part of my ask there, right? Will it look similar to that? There, a lack of screening. My second
aesthetics, yeah.
Yeah. My second question, incognito here, and it was asked earlier by somebody else from the public. We have no idea right now, knowing the impact on wildlife this is going to have. I know there's a lot of concerns already with coyotes and different animals that are coming into the neighborhoods. With such limited undeveloped land left on the island, I think it would be great to understand how this type of structure does impact the neighboring wildlife and communities.
Well, I'm not sure that we have anything in any of our ordinances that require wildlife study, do we? Not that I can think of.
I think it's more at the state level.
Yeah, it might be something that the applicant wants to take a look at, but I'm not sure that under any project that we could force a wildlife study. It is an interesting idea, though.
And it buffers state highway, which might, right, 24.
24 is a state highway, that's right.
So there might be something there, not our local jurisdiction.
Yeah, I don't know, but we can ask the applicant to let's look at that. They're looking for things to address, and that may be one of them they want to take a look at.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's something we can take a look at with DEM and Fish and Wildlife. So yeah, we'll add that to our notes as we move along.
Did you have another question?
I do not. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board?
Kevin Gavin.
You mean our attorney? Mr. Gavin?
You're muted.
You're muted, Kevin.
Or you have laryngitis.
Sometimes it's muted here and sometimes it's muted there,
I think he froze.
Nope. I'm sorry. That
Hang on. We lost you, Kevin.
Still muted.
that was an inadvertent click.
Oh, okay.
Gee, that doesn't happen, does it?
Sorry.
So, okay, Kevin. So did you have something you want to say?
No, I have nothing. I accidentally hit that. I was looking around and I hit
Form of butt diameter.
Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the board and the applicant?
Doesn't look like we have any more. Oh, we have one more.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. I'm back. This is Chris Amesbury and Selma Drive, Portsmouth again.
Sure. Go ahead, sir.
How are we measuring the return on the investment of this project? In other words, what are we defining as success or?
We don't.
Yeah.
We don't. The applicants come in and we rule on the applicant. If it succeeds or fails, it's the financial risk is theirs. That's why we have a bond to make sure that if they do fail, that we can clean the site up.
Something's to do with us.
But the economics of it doesn't have anything to do with us.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Any member of the public?
But we have one more.
Sure.
It's, Lark, if you could identify yourself with your full name and your, address.
It's Lark Roderick, 73 West Passage Drive.
Did you get that, Dee?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hang on a second. I just want to make sure we got your name down.
Yes, I did.
You did get it? Okay, thank you very much. What's your question?
I was just wondering about the setbacks and if you could talk about how far the setback is. I'm sorry, I might have missed a few minutes in the beginning.
All right, we can have him go through that again. Is your engineer still there, sir?
Yep, I didn't quite hear I don't know if it was tax.
It's setbacks.
Setbacks, yes. So on the site plan here, we're showing a 50-foot setback to the tree clearing line. The 50-foot is required from the property line. But then for vegetation buffering and screening, we're exceeding the requirement to also meet 50 feet, even though the requirement is less than that. So that's that 50 feet minimum that you see around the perimeter.
And when you're talking about buffers, you said it would be buffers. What kind of buffers?
A buffer meaning the distance, 50 feet distance from the property line, and then buffer as in visual buffer, a screening buffer, vegetation buffer, ways to mitigate the views of the project. Does that answer your question?
No, I was wondering what kind of screening, like how high would bushes be, or what kind of fencing, or what kind of tree, and who would be responsible for keeping them so the neighbors are buffed from the view of the.
Drew, can I take that?
Sure.
Typically, we would do, we'd go out to the site and we'd, screen the areas that, to alleviate, the visual from the areas that, are close to the project. And the maintenance and the maintenance of that buffer and the type of screening. The screening would be done, we'd have a landscape architect do the plans for the screening, and the maintenance and the thing would be in the O&M plan, that we'd submit to the town, would be responsible to make sure the plants are upkept, and if they die, they'd be replaced, and that would all be in the O&M plan that the town would require.
Thank you.
Or what an O&M plan is.
An operation and maintenance plan?
Correct, and it's essentially a contract with the town.
Correct.
Thank you.
Did you have any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else, please? Any member of the public?
Don't see anymore.
Going once? Going twice? Okay, we're going to close out this meeting. You don't need anything more from us, do you?
Scott, Scott, I think you're on mute. But I think we're just looking for guidance on next steps.
But you don't need us to make a decision or a recommendation, right?
No, we don't need a recommendation. We were just looking for input from the board on when we come back.
And the public.
And the public.
And the public.
Board and the public. So when we come back, we cover all the bases of, what the concerns are in this project.
All right, we are then going to move on to the next agenda item, which is item number 4. And this is West Main Solar 1. And this is a proposed facility at AP 44 Lot 15 on West Main Road, less than 1 mile north of Russo Road. And again, a pre-application informal concept review. The applicant may proceed.
Yeah. So I'm just going to speak quickly and let Drew take it over again. This project.
Your name and address, please.
Scott Milnes, Equinox Renewables, 100 Bellevue Avenue, Newport, Rhode Island.
Thank you.
So this project is in a commercial industrial district, and I'll just do a brief thing in this. There's been a lot of concern with the abutters on this particular site. So on this site, I mean, per the ordinance, I think we're required 50-foot buffers. We've done a 50, we left a 50-foot tree buffered, and then we've gone 100-foot past that buffer on the size of the project abutting the neighbors, and Drew will go all over that. And we've provided, that we're gonna do landscaping, in additional landscaping, within those buffers. So I'll let Drew take over now.
Please reintroduce yourself.
Thanks, Scott. Again, my name is Andrew Vardakis. I'm a registered professional engineer in Rhode Island. I'm a civil engineer and project manager for Wood, Environment, and Infrastructure Solutions. Our office is located at 275 Promenade Street in Providence. So again, I have the site plan up. Can everybody hear me and see the site plan?
Yep, I can.
So again, very similar to the previous project, I have the packet up. The first 2 pages were the pre-application concept review request and the checklist with the pertinent information. So as Scott mentioned, we're zoned in the light industrial and commercial zone here. Similar type size of project, we're at 3.1 megawatts DC. So the site is currently undeveloped and is mostly treed. No structures on the site. Access again is going to come off of West Main Road. So similar type size of modules. We have about 7,500 PV modules. That's the orange located in the center, surrounded by a 6-foot high chain link fence. This black X line surrounding the array. The yellow line again represents tree clearing. As Scott mentioned, we're leaving a 50-foot buffer along the property line on the south and east. Remaining, we'll leave the existing vegetation to remain, and then fill in with evergreens and additional vegetation as needed. So that's what this 50-foot line, this purple line represents 50 feet off of the property line, and that the property line is the red line. Yellow line represents tree clearing, and again the black, the fence line, and this green line here, as Scott mentioned, this represents 150 feet from the property line. So as he mentioned, the ordinance requires a 50-foot setback to the project, but we're giving a 50-foot vegetation buffer and then an additional 100 feet back to the project in that sensitive area. So as we go through the narrative, again, this lot size is about 18 acres, and the solar array, the black line, is about 8 acres. So that's about 45% of the lot. The tree clearing, the yellow line, is about 12 acres. And then we go through the same bullet list, very similar to the last project, addressing the large solar energy system ordinance requirements. Same design with the ground mounted system, the fixed panels, about 9 feet in the back, on the north side, sloping down to the lower side, about 2 or 3 feet off of the ground. The ground surface again will be grass here, similar type of process with stormwater, erosion, sedimentation control. Yard setbacks I mentioned, cited to minimize impacts to neighbors and natural resources. Same principles apply for tree clearing, grass planting, native species. The fence located 6 inches off the ground for wildlife passage. Same type of design. Same interconnection study with the inverters located within the array, underground conduit going out to the poles. These brown dots represent new utility poles going out to the existing poles out on West Main, and this gray gravel access road coming into the site, again with a gate located at the fence as you get into the project. Land clearing, I mentioned about 12 acres. Security fencing, I mentioned 6-foot fence, no barbed wire, raised for wildlife. Buffer areas and screening, you can see along the east and the south. I mentioned number 10, ground cover and plant species. As we heard on the last project, this is a preliminary vegetation design. As Scott mentioned, we've done full landscape plans before for other projects. Lighting will be minimal to none. Signage only for emergencies. I mentioned the power lines out to the west side. And again, the same type of documentation for site control, decommissioning, abandonment, surety bonds, all those same types of principles will apply for this project. Same stormwater calculations, permit application DEM that I mentioned, and the same agency checks for historical, archaeological. As we mentioned with the last project, also check with DEM and Fish and Wildlife for sensitive species and resources. So that's the overview. I'll flip through the same figures here. Same type of setup as the last project. Can everybody still see this and still hear me?
Yes.
So figure 1, the locus map with the property located in the center here. A little bit of more of a zoom out view. We have the 200-foot abutter map shown here in the dashed line. The abutters list. Same proposed site plan we just saw. Environmental constraints. Again, this was developed from Rhode Island GIS. There's some conservation areas across the street, but nothing located on the property. This again, the similar soils map. The zoning map, as Scott mentioned, commercial and light industrial. And then again, some typical Google street views and aerial views of the property. Topo map from the town. And again, the same 2 electrical sheets from the applicant for the electrical design. So with that, again, happy to take any feedback from the board and the public.
All right, let's start with members of the board. Anybody have any questions of the applicant on this petition?
I have one question. Dave Garso?
Is that you, Mr. Garso? I don't see your face. That's not your fault, it's ours.
I'm here.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Garso.
I was just curious as to, but that's all trees on this one. And do you take down the trees in the buffer zone and put up something else, or do you actually leave the trees?
Couldn't quite hear that, but I think what I heard is about tree clearing. So everything inside of the yellow line is cut. And generally stumps are removed or ground within the fence line so that the post can be installed. And then everything outside of this yellow line remains. And then along the eastern and southern perimeter is filled in with additional vegetation as needed.
Got it.
Any other member of the board? I'm sorry, Dave, were you done?
No, that's good. Thank you.
All right, does any other member of the board have a question of the applicant? Anybody? I do. I had a whole series of questions before. I assume the answer to those questions from that prior petition are the same here regarding about bonds and
Correct.
all the rest of that stuff. Okay.
Correct.
All right. And does any member of the public, let me just finish. Does any other member of the board wish to ask the applicant a question? Hearing them, we'll open it up to the public. Does any member of the public wish to ask the applicant a question on this petition?
We have someone who keeps, oh, okay, this is Lark. Lark, if you could identify yourself again, your name and address.
It's Mark Roderick, 73 West Passage Drive.
All right, Dee, did you get that?
Were you able to get it?
Well, hang on just a second.
What was the drive again? 73?
West Passage.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. You can ask your question, please.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment. Maybe you could just direct it on some of the concerns with the neighborhood in this area. We were not happy with the small setbacks, and I appreciate you increasing the setbacks. I live on the north side, and I was wondering why that setback is different.
You live on which side?
On the north side.
On the west side.
What the north side?
On the north.
North side.
She lives on the north side?
Yep.
Mr. Harding says you live on the north side. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yes, and I was wondering about that setback and how far it is.
All right, we'll ask them. Gentlemen?
Yeah, if I'm understanding correctly, about the buffers, we show a greater buffer on the east side, the 150 feet back of the project, and the south side, due to the residences on those sides. And if I'm understanding correctly, I heard north side, we don't have as great a buffer on the north because of the open field here, but if I'm understanding correctly, it's perhaps a residence over in this area.
Are
And
you close to the West Main Road?
No, I own the field actually.
Oh, okay.
Side.
My answer would be that there's no direct abutting residence structure adjacent to the property line, such as are along the east and southern areas. But we're still providing the 50-foot existing vegetated buffer as along the entire project.
You're providing it, it's required, so you have to provide it. But I don't think that anyone in the neighborhood was happy with the setbacks, and that includes me on that side.
Correct. The requirement, I believe, is 20 feet, so we're proposing 50 to exceed that requirement.
Sure, I'm not sure that's true.
It's a 30-foot vegetated buffer.
30 feet, excuse me.
All right, well, maybe that's something I have to address the council then.
Okay, do you have any other questions to us?
For
To the abutter?
the,
Not the abutter, the applicant.
no, thank you.
Any other member of the public wish to address the board or the applicant?
Yeah, we have one more, hold on. one
Sure.
second. Yeah, it's, is it Luis?
It's, uh,
Hang on, we don't have you yet.
So could you unmute yourself, Luis?
Yes.
Oh.
How was that?
Yeah.
All right, your full name and address, sir, please.
Okay, Louis Latendra, 94 Sweet Farm Road, Portsmouth. So I'm on the corner of Sweet Farm, which is probably the first house corner of this project. So I was looking at I'm concerned about the yellow cut zone. And how far is that from my property line? Drew?
Sorry, I'm finding my mute button. So the yellow cut line is 50 feet off of the eastern property line and the southern property line.
So you will not cut anything 50 feet from my property line? Is that correct?
Correct. I didn't hear exactly which home you're in, but correct. We
I'm
won't.
on 94. So I'm the very first house, I think, in that corner there
You talking about where it bends or?
on Sweet Farm Road.
Okay.
Correct. So we won't be cutting any closer than 50 feet to the property line.
Also, will you be putting up trees in front of that besides the no cut zone in front of that?
Correct. As Scott Milnes, the applicant, mentioned on the last project, this is a conceptual proposed screening vegetation. So if you can see the screen, we have a note to fill in evergreen vegetation buffer as needed. And as Scott mentioned with previous projects, we've gone out to the site and worked with the town and worked with the abutters to find locations that are ideal for screening. These are just conceptual at this point. But as we've heard from the board and from other abutters, landscape plans are typically required. So that's something we'll look into as we proceed.
What type of greenery would you be using, Drew?
I can't speak to that since I'm not a landscape architect, but Scott, typically it's evergreens with varying native species. That's correct, Scott.
Correct. We've used arborvitaes and evergreens and, different species, and we would, work the details out with a landscape architect that would help us, place those trees along those buffers.
Is there any noise that comes from these things, like hums or anything like that, from the transformers?
No, the transformers on the other side of the site, on the street side, the inverters, you won't pass the fence line, you won't hear the inverters, and the fence line is 150 feet from the property lines. So you won't hear any noise in the inverters, a typical transformer, and you don't hear any noise. You typically won't hear much noise out of a transformer either.
Thanks very much. I appreciate you guys speak.
Thank you.
Is there any other member of the public that wishes to address the board?
Yes, we have Robin Yokin. If you could please state your name and your address for the record.
Hi, my name is Robin Youngkin, and I'm at 49 West Passage Drive. I just want to point out that I am also on the north end of this project, and my house is right to the left of the open field on the north. So you can see that I have a very clear view of that property as it's going to be cleared. I also, along with Lark, feel that the 50-foot buffer is not something that I want. I think that since all of the neighbors should benefit from a larger buffer. I'm also really concerned. I guess I have more of a comment, but I'm really concerned too about the idea of clearing all of those acres of woodland where there is a lot of wildlife, and a fence that's raised 6 inches off of the ground to allow for wildlife is absolutely ridiculous. Since I think maybe a rabbit or a mouse could get underneath that, but I don't think anything else will. So I guess my question's for the planning board. I'm wondering if you are a planning board and you're planning about what our future town is going to look like, where are you going to draw the line? Are you going to let all of West Main Road be overcome by solar farms like the one that we have to look at across?
Question about this petition.
Where I'm talking about this petition too. This is just another one of the solar farms that has sprung up in Portsmouth, right?
First of all, please don't use the word farm. I haven't seen anything growing on these properties yet. It's a facility. But yes, go ahead, ma'am.
I agree with you. I don't think farm is an appropriate word either, since there's nothing farm-like about it. I'm just wondering where you're going to draw the line.
Well, the fact of the matter is that people own their own property, and if they wanted to go in and clear cut this right down to the ground, whether it was this petition or some other petition, they have a right to do that. So, I understand your angst, but, they have certain rights as property owners.
And don't the neighbors have certain rights too?
Not to regulate somebody else's property.
Really? Then what are you doing?
We're managing this particular growth. If we didn't manage it, they put it right up to the property line.
So I'm just, I just am dismayed about how the planning board is allowing all of these things to take place in Portsmouth. And this particular property is in my neighborhood, so I'm especially annoyed by that.
All right, well, you have a right to have an opinion. There's no question about it.
The other thing is the one that everybody is most annoyed with, we are completely powerless, which is the one at Melville, because that's government property and we have no say.
I know that. I realize that, but that's not the only solar farm around. And it just looks like there's going to be one after another. So that's what I'm worried about. Also, living there, I know what the water runoff is like on a rainy day, or even when the snow melts. There are puddles in the road in front of Cindy's Cafe. I believe that if you clear this property, there will be a huge flow of water going right into Melville's parking lot.
That's a legitimate question. The developers, please.
Yep, and as I mentioned, all of these projects, we do stormwater analyses and calculations, and all that's handled through permitting with Rhode Island DEM. So that's something we look at with stormwater runoff, erosion and sedimentation controls, and treatment practices as required to take a look at that runoff. So that's certainly something we always take a look at with these projects.
Well, the fact of the matter is your development cannot put any more water out there. You have to contain the surface water, and you're going to have to come in with a plan that does that.
Correct.
How would you do that?
Well, they can do it with swales. There are a lot of engineering things that they could do to contain retention ponds. I'm not an engineer either, so I don't pretend to know all the ins and outs, but they can contain the runoff on site.
That's all. I'm sorry if I came off as being too aggressive there, but I am really irate over this. So, and now that I know that I only get a 50-foot buffer, and that right now those trees don't have any leaves on them, so 50 feet is really nothing. It doesn't block anything. And a 5-foot arborvitae is not going to do very much either for the neighbors. And I noticed that there is no buffer that's being planted along the north end of that.
Maybe now they'll consider that.
Yep.
That's the whole idea of having the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to speak on this petition?
We have a Tom. Tom, if you could identify yourself with your first and last name and your home address.
Hi, this is Tom Grieve. I just wanted to correct.
Address, sir? Your address, sir?
110 Thayer Drive.
All right, thank you.
I just wanted to correct, this is slightly off topic, but I wanted to correct a misconception. And Mr. Harding brought it up, so I think it's worth doing. The town certainly had the ability to work with the Navy to control what we are seeing on Stringham and West Main Road. The Navy right now wants the town and the state to take over Stringham and Burma Road. We had all sorts of ability to negotiate with them on that. So I hate hearing that the town has absolutely no power over what happened at Stringham Road. That is absolutely, totally incorrect.
Let's get back to this petition.
Well, I'd like to,
hang on.
I'd just like to address it. Tom, if I was wrong, I apologize. It was purely from what I was told when I asked those same questions. The answer that was given to me is that the Navy did not and does not have to participate. And so based on information, asking the same question that these people are bringing up, that's what I was told. So I apologize if I've hurt your feelings or anybody else's out there with, if I am wrong. It was purely from information that was given to me.
Let's get back to this petition. Do you have a comment on this petition, sir? We lose.
He's just not responding.
I'm muted.
No, we hear you.
Okay.
We hear you.
Mr. Harding, I did not say you made a mistake. I was told the same thing as well, but it is not true. The town has every ability to negotiate.
I have a comment on this petition. Are you there, sir?
Yes, no, I wanted to correct that, and I didn't think Mr. Harding made a mistake.
Yeah, it's a side issue. The issue before us right now is this petition. Do you have a question about this petition or a comment?
No, I do not.
All right, thank you, sir, very much. Does anyone else from the public wish to be addressed? Address this issue, this petition or this applicant?
We have, Lark.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you for calling on me. I just wanted to ask the board a question if possible.
Well, if it's relevant, sure.
Yes, it's definitely relevant about this. I'm just wondering, is there a time where we are going to be able to talk to the board about what goes in here? Or is this the only meeting and this is the only way we're going to address it?
You're talking about process?
I guess what I'm asking is, am I going to and just see there, or am I going to have a chance to actually talk to the board about it before I look out?
Sure. Sure. The way this works is the applicant is here just to find out what we think about it and what the public thinks about it. This isn't the actual petition, but they don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole, spending a lot of money on all kinds of engineering unless they think that there's a possibility that the thing could go forward. And they want, let me finish, and they want the input from the neighbors because they're going to want to try to make the neighbors happy. Now, what's going to happen is at some point they're going to file a petition with the zoning board.
For this one, it'll be with the planning.
With the planning board. They will have to come back to us with a full-blown petition. Everybody who's in a butter will get notice, and there will be a full-blown hearing on the petition with the details, so that we can all look at exactly what they're proposing and what they're asking from us. That's the process. So yes, there is another bite at the apple on this. Now, as to the broader question, which is the whole idea of zoning and all the rest of that, once the comprehensive community plan is put in place, then we're going to go back and look at zoning and what we need to do to zoning to meet with the comprehensive community plan. But we're not there yet. And certainly the public will have an input on that process as well. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, just so that I understand, because I'm sure you're aware of that this neighborhood has had issues before, and we went through the whole town council, and the town council committee told us that if we were unhappy, that we would be able to talk to someone as it went down the line with our concerns. And now I see here we are a little bit further down the road, and we really haven't addressed the concerns that they passed with the ordinance when they told us that the ordinance, when it stands, that we would actually be able to change it. And that the setbacks would be talked about before anything went ahead. I'm just a little concerned that things are going ahead, with the ordinance in place, with us not being able to discuss the details that we were told we could. And I'm hoping that—
I don't know who told you what. All I can say to you is we have an existing ordinance. We have to apply that existing ordinance until it's changed.
Well, I'm just telling you that if you look back at the meeting at the town council, they said that we would be able to discuss it and change setbacks once we got further on.
I don't know what to tell you about that. I wasn't there. I'm not on the town council.
No. Okay, I guess we'll have to go back and review that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, we have, Mr. M, with their hand raised, if you could, give your name, your full name and your address. Is there M?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, your full name and address, please.
Jesse McHugh, 48 Sweet Farm Road.
Thank you.
So I have three brief questions. The first one is, if we look at proposed site plan 3.1 up on the screen now, if you have the curve of Sweet Farm Road, I am 2 houses up. And as my property line going east goes into the proposed site, I have a 7-foot elevation drop. So all of the water that kind of funnels downward usually ends up under my house. I've got two 3/4 horsepower pumps that run pretty much all winter, pumping out that back area. If you guys are coming into that, right now I have an existing wall from the turn of the century that's kind of holding my lawn in place. If we go in there and start taking up all these trees, it's going to undercut what nature has kind of built up as a dam. Will you guys address that in any way?
Well, well, I'll let the applicant address it first.
Yeah, that's who I'm asking more than anybody.
Yeah, similar to the last question about runoff, that's hello?
Who are you?
Andrew Vardakis,
Thank you.
engineer from Wood on behalf of the applicant.
Go ahead.
Yes, so as the last comment was about stormwater and runoff, that's something we take a look at with the state at DEM. And as the board mentioned, part of those requirements is that existing runoff, the proposed development cannot exceed existing runoff. So that is something that we take a look at with the development.
Okay.
I would suggest to the applicant too, I know that our storm runoff regulations only speak to a 25-year storm. I will tell you that for the past many years now, the board has required it to be designed for a 100-year storm.
Okay.
Something that you might want to keep into consideration.
And also regarding the Scott Mills and Equinox, regarding the question, we're not disturbing anything within that 50-foot buffer. So where the closest disturbance we have to his property line would be 50 feet away.
Yeah, but still, you still have to make sure that there isn't an increase.
Yes.
Any kind in runoff from that property.
Correct.
Remember, we've been applying a 100-year standard.
Correct.
You do your engineering figures, put that into it. Did that answer your question, sir?
It does, yes, thank you. And the second question is, are the arrays put into sonotubes going down into concrete? Like, what's the depth that you're going to drive these in?
It's a galvanized post, but typically we do a 6-foot drive. There'd be no concrete footings on any of the structures except the transformer pads.
Okay. I think that's all I have.
I thought you said 3 questions.
Yeah, the third one kind of got answered while we were talking.
Okay. Okay, so you all set?
I'm all set, thank you much.
Thanks. Any other member of the public wish to address the board?
We have, we have Anthony Hinton, of 702 Bristol Ferry Road, who had a question. The question is, will the town of Portsmouth receive any benefits, either this or the prior solar array, i.e. municipal buildings, school buildings, streetlights?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Is it like, is this for the town's benefit?
Yeah.
I think that's what she's asking. Can the applicant answer that question?
I can tell you that the town will receive a tangible tax from this project for the solar installation of $5 per kilowatt AC, and it's a 2,500. This system is both systems are 2,500 to 2,500 AC, and that's a state law. So the town will receive 12,500 for each project for tangible tax, and that's a state law that was written.
Is that yearly or one-shot deal?
Yearly.
I think that was the question. Yeah. Is there anything else? Any other applicant? Member of the public?
Last call for any more public comment. Please raise your hand.
Mr. Chairman, this is Seth again. I'd like to ask one more question if possible.
Of course.
What is the, why are you guys clearing outside? So in other words, why are you clearing outside of the fence between the 50-foot buffer? Why not just leave it all? I think that would help, some of the neighbors' concerns about line of sight, and then maybe including some of the evergreens on the north.
Right.
To provide year-round screening,
We can definitely, some of the buffers at the north are actually more than 50 when the site curves up in the top left corner, but we can definitely look at some additional buffers up there if there's some holes in the existing buffers. And as far as on the west, east, and south sides, we have to have 150-foot buffers of the trees for shading of the array from the trees. So if a tree is 50 feet tall, we typically a 2.5x the height of the tree, and that would be the buffer so the array doesn't get shaded by all the trees.
So it's like a functional requirement of the site to have that for the sun view shed.
Yeah, because if the sun hits the array shuts down. So we have to have a shading buffer around the perimeter of the array.
And that would be your like biannual mow native grass mix type scenario?
In the buffers?
Correct.
Yeah, we keep all those buffers to a biannual mow.
Right. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
We have two more. This is the Nicole Amesbury, although it's.
Yeah, hi. Again, Chris Amesbury, 15 Anselmo Drive, Portsmouth. My first question is for the applicant. Understanding and appreciating the higher cost of real estate and land on Aquatic Island, why is Portsmouth being targeted for these types of solar projects?
I don't think Portsmouth is particularly being targeted for solar projects. I think it's throughout the state. And I think the state is, pushing for renewable energy within the state. Each town has their own ordinance and allows solar and, it's their own locations, but I don't think there's a push in Portsmouth. I mean, I've looked at, I'm a Middletown resident. I've looked through Portsmouth and, there's not a lot of sites that, besides the vacant farmland, there's not a lot of particular sites like this site and like, our first residential site that is a fit for these solar projects, and I think the farmers, most of the farmers like to keep the land that they have. So it's not a tremendous opportunity. If you go down all west and east Main Road, there's really not a lot of opportunities within Portsmouth. I mean, the state's pushing on gravel pits and, brownfields and other, carports and things. And it's somewhat limited to the town. But again, it's based on every town and every ordinance they have.
Thank you, Scott. And then last question for the board, just to kind of echo one of the comments that Robin made earlier. My earlier question was on, the return on the investment, and I recognize that we're not putting necessarily any kind of financial investment into these projects, but it also sounds like outside of a state required tax break, there's really no return or benefit. So as we think forward, what can we do to preserve what makes Portsmouth and keep some of the wildlife and undeveloped land intact for future generations?
I'm sorry?
The Aquatic Island Land Trust.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm just going to speak for myself and not for the board. It's very hard when you don't own a piece of property to tell somebody who does own that piece of property what they can or cannot do within certain parameters. That's what zoning does. We do have people, the Aquatic Land Trust comes to mind, that buys easements and preserves open space and actually buys land. But unless you own the land, then the people who do actually own the land have rights to develop that property within zoning classifications and setbacks and things like that. So we're going to have a review of all the zoning regulations once the comprehensive plan is put in place, which should be not that far from now. And I would urge members of the public to become involved in that process, so that if this current zoning doesn't accurately reflect what you think we should be doing, then that's the public forum in which to express those concerns.
Great. Thank you very much.
No other questions?
No other questions.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
We have Robin Yokin. Robin, if you could give your full name and address again.
Yes. Hi, I'm back again. Robin Youngkin, 49 West Passage Drive.
Thank you.
I didn't catch this earlier, but I'm worried about that north border. and whether or not those trees are going to be cut down? Or is that buffer going to be left the way it is right now?
Well, that's a question the applicant can answer.
So if you can see the screen, the yellow line represents the tree clearing line. So anything between the yellow line and the red line will remain in place.
And how do you think that there is a possibility that you could give a larger buffer there?
I'll leave that to the applicant, Scott Milnes, but I believe we, like we said, this is a conceptual supplemental screening plan as we showed on the east and west, but I think that's something we can take a look at based on the feedback we're hearing tonight to supplement this area up on the north side as well.
We can look at the buffer to the north and maybe infill some screening if there's holes. But this is the top section is we feel it's a decent screening by what's required. It's excessive of what the town requires. So we can look at have the landscape, when we do a landscape plan, we can have them look at that top section and maybe do some selective infill.
I'm pretty sure that when I attended the town council meeting and the solar ordinance was discussed, that there was supposed to be a 50-foot. So, as Mark said, you're doing what you're supposed to do in terms of the 50 feet. I think it is a shame that we can't preserve this land for something else. And I just want to read this thing from the comprehensive plan that we do have. It says the landscape of Portsmouth will present an orderly, balanced, and rational development pattern that helps preserve community character, enhance physical stability, and protect the quality of the natural environment. I hope the planning board takes that to heart. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Any member of the board? You all set?
No one, their hand raised.
No hand raises, no other comments? All right, I'm going to declare the petition closed.
Now we have one that is raised.
All right, let's hear
it. Is there M?
Yes, that's Jesse McHugh, 48 Sweet Farm Road again.
All right, go ahead.
I'll be more blunt. I was wondering if the applicant can tell us why he picks Portsmouth to bring the solar array.
I'm from Aquidneck Island and I built projects on Aquidneck Island, but our client reached out to us. We didn't pick the site. We don't own the site.
Okay. Fantastic answer. Thank you very much, guys.
Anybody else?
Going once, going twice.
All right, application or the discussion is closed. Does the applicant have what it needs?
We do, and we appreciate the planning board's time, and we'll put everything we need together and hopefully see you in the near future.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right, that takes care of item number 5. No, I'm sorry, item number 4. Item number 6. Is that the one that's getting continued? Yeah. Pardon? Number 6.
Number 5.
Number 5, rather. Is that getting continued?
Yes, that's being continued.
Well, you're to when? Do you know when they want to be heard?
The next meeting.
All right, do we know what date that is?
It is February
10th. All right. So what's the pleasure of the board?
That we just, as far as this applicant here?
Yes, item number 5.
Yeah, that we just give them the opportunity to come back on February 10th and give it a run with it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Wilson seconds. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. I was going to just say, all in favor say aye, but
Aye.
we can't do that anymore. All right, Ms. Wilson, since you already voted.
Aye.
Mr. Harding. Aye. Mr. Lopes.
Aye.
Mr. Garceau.
Aye.
Mr. Pilati.
Aye.
Did I miss anybody? Mr. Tibbetts.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. All right, we have one more item on the agenda. That's the monthly status report. Is there anything we need to take a look at specifically in there?
I have nothing more to add to the report.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board on the report?
I'll make a motion we receive and place on file.
There's a second? I'll second it. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Mr. Harding. Aye. Mr. Lopes.
Aye.
Mr. Tibbetts.
Aye.
Mr. Garceau.
Aye.
Mr. Pilati.
Aye.
Ms. Wilson.
Aye.
Did I get everybody? And the chair votes aye. All right, that concludes our business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Harding makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I assume all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody?
Aye.
We can do that one this way. Hey, I wanted to wish everybody a happy new year. And hope everybody stays healthy, and thank you very much. I know these Zoom meetings are not the easiest in the world to do or even endure. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Guy.
Thank you.
Thank you.